You wake up half buried in ice. Your fingers don't move. Your breath crackles in the air like broken glass. The wind isn't screaming. It's whispering. And that's worse. You can't see your tribe. You don't even remember falling asleep. But you know one thing: if you stay here, you die. Your fire's gone. Either the wind took it, or you were too tired to feed it. That doesn't matter now. You're alone in a whiteout. The kind where the sky and the snow blend into one flat wall of blindness. Your body's already shaking, not from fear, but from heat loss. The next stage is silence. There's no time to cry. You crawl. Each joint creaks like old bone against old ice. There's no fire to guide you, no scent to follow. The world is frozen and flat, and your only warmth is your own blood thinning by the minute. Your clothes are animal hides, stiff with ice and sweat. They don't trap heat anymore. They trap your skin against death. You know if you don't find cover, you won't last 12 hours. And worse, somewhere out there, something's watching. The Ice Age didn't just breed cold. It bred predators that knew when a human was weak. You need shelter. You need movement. You need another body not for comfort, but for warmth. That's the truth. No one wants to admit. The first reason humans ever touched each other in the Ice Age wasn't love. It was thermodynamics. Your ancestors didn't flirt. They didn't date. They pressed skin against skin to stay alive, under mammoth hides, in frozen caves, against the sharp stink of death and desperation. You crawl toward the shadow of a rock wall, your last hope, and think, could two naked bodies really save each other from 40-degree sex death? Your body wasn't made for this. Not anymore. Not like theirs. Your ancestors were smaller than you, denser, built for insulation, not aesthetics. Fat wasn't shame, it was a life insurance policy. Hair wasn't a feature, it was armor. Skin was thick, rough, layered with smoke, grease, and soot to hold in every molecule of warmth. You try to remember the facts. In Siberia, during the last glacial maximum, the average temperature hovered between 20 and 60 degrees Celsius. That's not discomfort. That's cellular death. Exposed flesh begins dying in minutes. Fingertips turn white. Lips crack. Genitals fragile. Nerve dense. Blood reliant are the first to go. And yet they mated. Not in pleasure. In strategy. There was no candlelight. No slow music. No ideal conditions. Just instinct wrapped in raw flesh, trembling with cold, driven by the oldest command written into bone: reproduce or die with your lineage. You want to imagine romance. You think of embraces, kisses, whispers in the dark. But Ice Age sex wasn't soft. It was pragmatic. It was friction desperately sought heat. It happened when there was shelter, when there was meat in the belly, when predators were far enough not to smell the sweat. Sometimes it wasn't even mutual. The line between consent and survival blurred fast when the fire went out, when warmth became currency, when your only choice was another body or death. And the myth that humans were too cold for sex. False. Cold suppresses testosterone, but survival triggers it. Adrenaline sharpens instinct. Fear primes action. In the bitter cold, the will to bond didn't vanish. It intensified, because alone. You froze. Together. You might last until dawn. So yes, Prehistoric humans had sex in sub-zero darkness, not because they wanted to, because they had to. And it always began with one thing: shelter. You find it barely a crack in the side of the glacier, just wide enough to slide into sideways. Inside, it's dark, silent. The air smells of wet stone, rot, and old blood. Maybe a wolf slept here last. Maybe something worse. But it's shelter. That means you live another hour. And it means someone else might too. Before touch came heat. Before heat came shelter. The cave was the first lover, unforgiving, tight, rough, but still better than the wind that peeled skin like bark. Your ancestors didn't wait for ideal moments. They carved them from the jaws of storms. Two people in a crevice, sharing the last hide, their breath fogging between them. No words, just a glance, a nod, an agreement born of necessity, not affection. They used mammoth hides, stitched with sinew, insulated with grass. Bodies pressed together beneath them, not out of lust, but for the science their minds couldn't name: shared thermal regulation. The human body emits around 100 watts at rest, double that in tension, in pain, in friction, under layers of fur and snow. Those watts became salvation. The cave absorbed the moans, not the erotic kind, the kind that came from moving frozen limbs against another's warmth, from trying to feel your own body again, from trying to make sure they were alive too. And sometimes, in those caves, it wasn't just sex. It was survival bonding, the kind of closeness that meant, if I die tonight, you take my tools, the kind of intimacy where breath meant heat, and heat meant one more day. You lie against the cold wall, shivering, and think about what your ancestors knew. Shelter wasn't a location. It was whoever had your back when the fire failed. And in the Ice Age, every mating began with that silent question: will you keep me warm? Warmth was a transaction, and in the Ice Age, that transaction often blurred the line between choice and necessity. You feel it now, that weight in the air, not just cold, tension, the kind that comes when you realize your survival might depend on someone else's body, and their survival might depend on yours. In this world, there is no privacy, no modesty, just instinct, ritual, and risk. Forget the modern fantasy of romance. Prehistoric sex was not about desire. It was a negotiation, one where comfort was a liability and trust was forged under duress. You didn't make love. You didn't even make eye contact. You made heat. And when two bodies pressed together under the weight of snow-laced furs, consent became more than yes or no. It became an unspoken pact. You keep me warm, I'll keep you alive. There was no room for coercion or confusion. The cold didn't allow it. Every movement had a cost. Every rejection could mean a frozen corpse in the morning. But make no mistake, this wasn't some lawless, primal chaos. Even then, among the mammoth bone circles and soot-marked caves, boundaries existed. Tribes enforced them in their own way. You didn't harm someone under the hide, not unless you wanted exile. And in the Ice Age, exile was a death sentence colder than any winter. Still, fear lived there, especially for the women. Smaller bodies, less muscle mass, faster heat loss, They were often at the mercy of the strongest. But strength wasn't everything. Cooperation was power. Reputation meant survival. And those who violated that balance didn't last long. So sex in the cold wasn't sacred. It wasn't shameful either. It was raw, deliberate, and drenched in tension. Not always safe, never soft, but always anchored in one reality in the Ice Age. Even intimacy was a form of endurance. The hunger came first, then the heat. Then, if the night was kind, the desire, but never before food. In the Ice Age, arousal didn't follow fantasy, it followed fire and flesh. You wouldn't feel it after days of starving, but give a hunter a full belly, a safe cave, and the absence of eyes in the dark and instinct would awaken like a buried ember flickering to life. You kill a reindeer, you share it. The tribe eats. There is laughter, or what passes for it. Bones crack in the fire, and grease warms your lips, blood under your nails, the adrenaline of the hunt still buzzing. And now, finally, you see her across the fire. Or him. Or both. It doesn't matter. What matters is that the cold has retreated. Just a little. And the breath between you carries steam. Sex didn't happen under stress. It waited for the aftershock, for the stillness. That moment between hunger and fear, when the body remembered it could want something more than just not dying. But even then, there were rules, signals, glances, proximity. If you pressed too soon, you risked shame or worse, rejection, which meant exposure, isolation. The cold wasn't just weather, it was punishment. So, the tribe watched. Everyone always watched. You think it was private, it wasn't. Nothing was. But that didn't stop it. The act itself was brief, mechanical, noisy. The hides muffled little, but the cold forgave nothing. It froze regrets mid-air. And sometimes, the sex didn't come at all. Just the closeness. A body to press against. Skin to skin, heartbeat to heartbeat. Two mammals refusing to vanish in the frost. Because that's what it really was, not romance, not conquest, but defiance. A spark, however small, in a world that wanted you dead by morning. You don't scream. Not here. Not now. Birth in the Ice Age wasn't sacred. It was silent, necessary, brutal. You crouch in the back of the cave, knees wide, muscles clenched, biting down on your own fur-lined arm so no predator hears you cry. There is no midwife, no boiling water, no guarantee the baby will even be warm enough to cry. This is how you were born. And maybe this is how you'll die. The woman beside you grips your hand. Her face is smeared with ash, her breath visible in the air like smoke from a dying flame. She's done this before, not because she was trained, because she survived it. Love didn't look like kisses and soft names. It looked like this someone staying beside you when the blizzard howled. Someone handing you a scrap of hide soaked in blood and praying your child breathes before frost bites their lungs. There were no lullabies, only rhythm. The rhythm of survival. Push, pause, cry, silence, life. Maybe. And when the baby came, they wrapped it in fur still damp with yesterday's kill, pressed it to the chest of the one who bore it. No celebration, no name, Not yet. You only named the ones who lived past the first week. And if that child grew strong, they'd learn what love really meant in the Ice Age. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't security. It was staying close, staying warm, staying when others left, staying through the cold that stripped flesh from fingers and breath from lungs. That's what they had. That's what you forgot. Sex, birth, death. They weren't separate things. They were one cycle, one rhythm, one long, frozen heartbeat echoing through time. And now you understand why they didn't just survive. They endured.